With 2024 now in full swing, new gun laws coming into effect, and a new outlook for the 2024 legislative session, we're going to talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. That's right, it is New Year's, and I hope you had a wonderful celebration ringing in the new year. We here at CRPA and our attorneys, obviously, if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, have been hard at work. We've already experienced some of the valleys that we looked forward to in the year 2024 already. I want to discuss a few of those being laws that are coming into effect as of this week, the first week of the year, as well as some legislation that we're looking forward to for the 2024 year as well. To do that, we have brought in CRPA's legislative director. He is also the host of Firing Line Radio on AM 590 every single Saturday. If you don't know, go ahead and check that out. Rick Travis. Rick, thank you very much for being with us today.
Pleasure to be on.
Absolutely. But before we get into that today, guys, 2023 was a stellar year for the CRPA TV YouTube channel. I want to continue that going into 2024. We want to get as many ears on this as possible so that, especially coming up to the 2024 elections, people can be educated on the Second Amendment movement in California and the politicians that will further that movement. To do that, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Hit that little notification bell. If you didn't know, with all of the SB2 drama going on, those notifications will alert you as soon as this information becomes available. So thanks again, guys. In 2023 was a good year, and we're looking to expand that in 2024. So, Rick, let's just get right into it. There are a couple pieces of legislation that have already come into effect first week of the year, and another one that's going to come into effect in July. Let's go ahead and start, though, with SB 1384. This was a piece of legislation that was actually signed into law in the 2022 session, but there is part of it that became effective January 1st, 2024. Go ahead and describe that to us, and can you also let us know, because CRPA has filed a lawsuit on this, where exactly we are in that process?
Yeah, so 1384 is like a lot of bills, and you're going to hear this from me this morning because I'm not a happy camper. None of the people listening to this should be happy campers. You know, the governor, Kevin, backing up a couple of years ago, made the comment not once, but several times, he was out to destroy the culture of firearms ownership. And people have to realize what he really said was, I no longer believe in the Constitution of the United States of America because I'm out to destroy people who believe they have an enumerated right, which is part of the Bill of Rights, which is the Second Amendment. And to try to dismantle it, he's actually went off of many components of the First Amendment, which I'll talk about as we're discussing a few of these bills today. But everyone listening needs to realize something. The reason in California and other Western states across the country that we have lost ground in some areas is because for some reason the 2A community goes, well, that cruddy politician that's doing this to me, I can't do anything about it because I'm not in their district. That is how we're losing, is because people throughout the country donate money to turn California the way it's turning. And so you can donate money to any politician anywhere in this country. And I'm not telling you to donate to one or another, but you need to get in the fight, because this is David Min, Senator Min out of Orange County, who is now wants to take all the stuff he's done to you as firearms owner on the national roadshow as a congressman. And he's running in the 47th for Congress and thinks he can get across the line because he's got all these people. If you want to know who your enemies are, who are the people that don't believe in the Second Amendment, it's real simple, folks. Right now, it's so easy. You go to somebody like David Min, a leader of the Anti-Second Amendment Committee's website, and you go to the endorsement page. Look who's backing him. And you can bet they're not backing you. And there becomes your list of people that you don't want to support. Having said that, and I'll get off my soapbox, sorry, Kevin. But you know, on 1384, what this is designed to do is hurt our community. And here's how it does it. It says, wherever there's a federal firearms license person, that we're going to tell a lie. And I'm going to be really clear about that. We're going to televise the government and say, hey, you know what's going on? All these mass shootings, that's due to people having straw purchases, meaning that someone bought a gun for a criminal to use illegally. And you know how that happens? Happens at gun stores. Yeah, that's right, because there's so many stats that show that like criminals go to gun stores. Wait, those don't exist in California and haven't for decades. So what was this about? It's really about going after all the small FFLs. And some of you may be out there and go, oh, well, I go to a big box store, so why would I care? Here's why you should care. Let's take Catalina Island, for example. There's roughly about 3,000 people that own firearms out there out of about 5,500 people that live there. For them to buy a firearm, there is one FFL on the island. But this is now going to require that in that person's house, that they have to have 24-hour video surveillance going. What? So their religious freedoms, if they want to have a Bible study or pray together, those get broadcasted, those get viewed. You know, they want to have a discussion as a husband and wife about their finances, like all that. That's not right. So people rightfully so are like, I'm not going to do that. Well, if you're not going to do that, you can't be an FFL anymore. This is going after someone's business. And at some point, people out there in California are going to be like, wait, how are they going after my business? And there's a famous story that comes out of World War II where this little Swiss watchmaker ignores all the things that Nazi Germany is doing to different groups because it's not his group until they come for the old and affirmed. And he goes, oh, wow, I never spoke up. And now they're coming for me and there's no one left to speak up for me. And that was his realization as he was being carted off.
We did a video on this a while back, and I remember just looking at the potential totals for what this would cost a business. And you are kind of, I feel like, hitting the nail on the head here. You know, even if you were to consider that large box stores generally have more revenue, more money to work with, this does seem to sincerely target those home FFLs, like the one I'm assuming you're referring to on Catalina, because I haven't seen a big box store on Catalina. And back then, when we were assuming those totals, that's sort of come to fruition. I've had business owners send me their quotes, and these are quotes of $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 that they're getting from surveillance companies to put in a system that would make them compliant with SB 1384. So this is totally a way to run the smaller FFLs out of these communities. And in a lot of communities, those smaller FFLs are what makes up the community itself. So it does also fit into the culture side that you're talking about. Gavin Newsom was commenting on when he first became governor. Although I will tell you, we had a great offering. And Jacob, if you could put this in the description below, just as a reminder, guys, we've sent emails on this. We've mentioned it in the past videos. Perimeter Protection USA is offering a discount to CRPA business affiliates. I don't want to forget about them and thank them. So if you can put that, check that out. It's a link in the description below. You can get a quote from them if you're still trying to become compliant with this. But Rick, so the ramifications are clear, right? Are we going to just start seeing FFLs drop out of California?
Well, yeah, you're going to see FFLs drop out. You're going to see a lot of areas in California, and this is politically targeted. I mean, if you think about it, if you live in parts of, big counties like LA, and when I say big, I mean population dense, they're primarily blue in their thing. So it's not going to impact that many people in those areas. Where it's going to impact people is you get up to counties like Sierra, get up to towns like Truckee, places there. They don't have big gun stores. They have small mom and pop stores for their populations. And if you remove those stores, then those people have to sometimes drive 60, 70 miles. And the problem is, in parts of California, 60 miles is an hour drive. In other parts of California, because of the terrain, the roads, you and I've traveled this state many times together, Kevin, 60 miles can sometimes be 3 hours one way, just because of the road conditions and the traffic. So now when you're talking, so that's a 6-hour trip to go to the gun store to find a firearm, purchase the firearm, and then another 6-hour trip to go pick it up, 12 hours of road time, gas, all those additional costs, hassles is a detractant. And that's what they want. They want those detractants. They're trying to go down. And when you couple that, and this is the thing, you can't look at any of these bills as standalones. You couple that with, oh, this 1 month of firearm, a firearm thing. It's not like the old days. Well, maybe I plan to go and I buy a shotgun and a rifle and a home defense pistol, maybe 2 shotguns because I want to take the wife or the kids with me or the husband and the kids. Well, you can't do that anymore. And so as a result, that just adds up. And so, some of these places, like in the Catalina case, that could be an additional $300 to $400 on the price of the firearm because I have to cross the channel, and go back and forth and stuff. And so this is all about raising costs. And one of the comments that the left puts out that I really want to highlight is they're like, well, we've done this to regulate other things. No, they haven't. Let's be clear. More people die annually and have forever from tobacco smoking. And I'm not going against anybody that smokes tobacco, but let's look at this. We're not putting cameras in to see about illegal cigarettes or illegal anything else. We haven't done it to marijuana factories, even though we know that at marijuana stores, things have been stolen, ripped off, and things like that, false purchases. Those are all existing in the status quo. We're not going after any of those businesses. You know why? Because the Dems see that being in their land, in their purview, their supporters. But they have went after this because they think that it's only Republicans own firearms, which is far from the truth. It's actually pretty closely driven down the line between Dems and independents and Republicans own firearms. It's a constitutional right. It's not a political right. And so people have to start looking at the totality of this, that this is all part of it. And as we go through some of the legislation that looks like it's going to come out this year, stuff that's still coming online that we're going to talk about today, the total package, it is an assault and it's created a crisis.
Well, certainly, as a consequence, maybe you do end up getting, people closer to the political center that wouldn't otherwise partake in the Second Amendment debate that are now going to be charged because they can't go and find something to defend themselves with. Another consequence of this legislation was a lawsuit from CRPA. We were able to get in front of a judge before the new year and before the law came into effect, but we were denied our, it was either a temporary restraining order or a preliminary injunction. I believe that we are set to be in front of another judge in the middle of January. But for the time being, this law is in effect. And what that law actually states is that those who are selling firearms are required to have 24-hour surveillance. They are also required to record and store that surveillance for up to a year in case it needs to be used by law enforcement. So that is something to take into account when you go in your gun store. Make sure that they are compliant and also know that you are being recorded. And that was kind of another thing in our lawsuit, that people don't necessarily like to be recorded. So
well, let's be upfront. I mean, you go to it's always been a tradition. I remember as a kid going with my grandfather to the local hunting and fishing store, and it was kind of like, I wouldn't know this until later on, but it was kind of like going to a bar, going to somewhere else where there were people you knew. You talked to them, how's the kids doing? Where are you going hunting? Where are you going fishing? Where are you doing this? Where are you doing that? Joking around, just having a good time. But in a society that is super, super sensitive on everything and every word that comes out of your mouth, people don't feel comfortable now saying anything because anybody can misinterpret, misrepresent what you say. They don't get the context. They don't hear the full story. They don't know the relationships. And so, again, that's designed to make you feel like, well, I don't want to go. I don't want to be recorded. I'll just meet you, Kevin, later on somewhere privately and nothing illegal was going on. And that's the thing that you got to realize. Had these cameras been in place 5-10 years ago, none of the mass shootings in California during the last decade would have been prevented. Not one. And that was brought up in testimony, and no one ever said, no, you're wrong. It would have stopped. Nope, it wouldn't have. But it's under that guise that they push this stuff through when it's really, we got to wake up. It's not about stopping crimes and mass shootings. It's about wiping out people that believe in the U.S. Constitution.
Right, and likewise, let's. I mean, in that light, let's move on to Senate Bill 2, where they claim that it's the CCW holders that need to be limited in their constitutional right in order to protect Californians from things like mass shootings and crime, which is the exact opposite. I mean, the CCW community for so long has been the community that they couldn't go to for those statistics. So obviously they they got behind their closed doors and they said, all right, we got to get rid of this group another way. Senate Bill 2 or prior Senate Bill 918 was the way that they've decided to do it. Rick, can you just give us a legislative overview from Senate Bill 918? How the heck have we gotten to where we got? And if you guys don't know, we got a good decision from Judge Carney in the federal district court that said Senate Bill 2 was unconstitutional. And the Ninth Circuit, at the waning hours of 2023, overturned that decision, which is why we're talking about it now, because sensitive places, which is a portion of Senate Bill 2, is now in effect as of January 1st. But Rick, how the heck did we get here? Can you give us the history of this bill?
Yeah, this bill is so personally frustrating because, I fought this. I remember having a discussion with our president and attorney Chuck Michelle prior to 918 headed down to the wire. And the discussion point was, we had been waiting for the Supreme Court to take a two-way case, and especially after a couple of justices had passed away and resigned, and we had new ones come on. We were like, maybe now we're going to get finally one of these cases up in front of the Supreme Court that would strengthen the McDonald decision, that would strengthen a few of the previous decisions. And we got it. And it's called the Bruin decision. And immediately afterwards, and this is where I feel like California gun owners have been incredibly myopic in their viewpoint of not seeing the national thing. The left freaked out nationwide. Bruin wasn't attacked just in California. It was attacked in the Midwest. It was attacked in the South, attacked in the North. Like, everybody went bonkers on the left because in that decision, Justice Thomas basically, and I'm not mocking him, I'm saying he basically mocked the left by saying, hey, carrying a CCW, you can't say not in a park. Yes, in a park. Not here. Yes, there. Like, he literally laid down and as an end cap said, you can't take an area like Manhattan and make it a gun-free zone. No. Now, the way the Constitution of the United States is written, when the Supreme Court says no, legislators who take an oath to uphold the Constitution are supposed to go, okay, that's a no-go zone. What people in this country didn't hear was legislators, governors like our own Gavin Newsom, who said, I don't agree with the Supreme Court. And also, I don't agree with the U.S. Constitution that backs the Supreme Court. So I'm going to crap all over it. And here's how we're going to do it. And the governor and the attorney general, who's supposed to be not the governor's buddy, but is supposed to watch the governor and hold the governor accountable, there is no line like that in California. Bonta, I would argue, is a puppet of the governor. He's never stood up to this governor. And so he said, sure, boss. And that's why we saw, what you said a couple minutes ago, the misuse of a court, because Bonta and the governor were influencing this recent overturn. Make no mistake about it. And the problem was when we got 918, they tried to do it as an emergency, which required a higher threshold. So when they lost on that higher threshold, even though they tried multiple times, even the attorney general breaking the rules of the legislature and walking in onto the floor. I mean, that was the most obvious manipulation by the governor in the AG's office. He's like, hey, on behalf of the governor, could you please change your vote? Hey, on behalf of the governor, could you please change? There's these favors, there's those. You're not supposed to be, none of us are allowed in there when they're doing that vote. But the governor had a lobbyist in the form of the AG doing it. And we still won because there were enough people, Democrats, I want to highlight, that said this is wrong. So what was their solution? We'll lower the bar. We'll lower the threshold, so we only need 50% plus one to get across. And that's what Senate Bill 2 was. And that's when people are like, well, how to get through? That's how it got through. We had the votes to stop it, but not to stop it at 50% plus one. And that's being led by Anthony Portantino, who, by the way, Kevin, I heard a lot of people who did not care for Adam Schiff as a congressman say, can it get any worse than Adam Schiff? Well, guess who's running for Adam Schiff's office? Anthony Portantino. So I will now argue, yes, it can get worse. And again, go to his website, find out who all the people that oppose you in your way of life, because they're all listed on his website, and start helping the people running against him. It's time to start firing these people because they're not upholding their oath. They take an oath to defend this Constitution, and they are systematically working at dismantling it. And what people need to realize, I get called all the time on, oh, well, you're just a one-issue guy, Rick. No, I'm not. Because to take apart the Second Amendment, they have disassembled the First Amendment. And Senate Bill 2 forces a thing called compelled speech. And if you ever doubted the lack of history that people have, what is so outrageous is this sensitive places? Yes, outrageous. First one. But the signage. And people are like, why are you somehow with the signage? Because the only other time this signage game has been played, folks, was in Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany, when they said, hey, no more can the gypsies come unless you put a sign up that says it's okay. No more can this group come, this group. And then eventually it got to the gays and the Jews and a whole bunch of other groups. But my point was, that's compelled speech. Compelled speech is when the government says, if you want to say you don't agree with us, you got to put a sign up outside that says you don't agree with us. Oh, and we won't hold you responsible. But I guarantee you, if it's some mom and pop coffee shop or restaurant, and they put a sign up that says, yes, Kevin, you can carry concealed firearms here, then when they come by with that little grading system of what your restaurant or coffee shop gets, the A, B, C, you're not going to get an A. You're not. Because it's like dealing with the CHP. Any law enforcement agent can tell you can drive a brand new car off the parking lot and they can find a violation.
So that essentially is what we're looking at here. We're looking at compelled speech in the form of forcing businesses to tell the world that they are accepting of somebody's constitutional right to carry a firearm. You're talking about increases in the regulations to get a CCW in the first place. You are talking about sensitive places in that whole list. We've done several videos on this, guys. You can check down in the description below, and we'll put the latest one in there. But the whole list of sensitive places that are created, this law is now in effect, and there might even be more to come because they did just go through the process of the Office of Administrative Law doing some emergency additions to Senate Bill 2. So more on that to come also. Rick, if we're not infuriated enough already,
there's more on Senate Bill 2. Because I'm still really ticked off. So I'll try to get this out quickly. But folks, they are putting out, hey, you know what? We've been working on this for years. Yeah, well, not that hard because on that sign issue and a lot of other issues, they haven't even created. So if people wanted to tell me that I could come into their thing, there's not a sign that's been approved by the government to put up. And they're taking their time, dragging their heels, getting those out, which reinforces what I said earlier about this is designed to take us and remove us off the map because they just don't like us. But the other thing is they keep saying again, Kevin, the reason for Senate Bill 2, Anthony Portantino says it every time. He did it yesterday. He's like, we did that because we're just trying to stop a mass casualty. There has not been one mass casualty by a CCW holder, not one. By the way, in California, we are the safest people with firearms, safer than law enforcement, have a lower threshold for crime than even law enforcement. So why go to all of this trouble to go after the most law-abiding citizens? And by the way, the other thing they don't want to tell you, and Kevin, there are stat after stat. CCW holders have prevented and stopped mass casualty incidents in California every year, but those stats don't go up. So the very people that have stood in harm's way, put their life on the line to protect others when law enforcement couldn't be there, which is why law enforcement likes CCW holders, is the very people that they turned on, which should come as no surprise because the same legislatures went after law enforcement.
Well, and if you aren't a CCW holder and you're watching this, and you aren't an FFL and you're watching this, there is certainly something to be upset at for you, because in July, we do have this little thing called AB 28 that is going to be coming into effect. It was signed into law. Rick, you were very vocal about this in the 2023 session. This is the additional, 11% excise tax on firearms, firearms parts, and ammunition. Rick, can you give us the background on this one and what the outlook is going to be for the latter end of 2024?
Yeah, this is from Assemblyman Gabriel, who this bill had been attempted by Levine when Levine was in office. Not once, not twice. It was known as the zombie bill. Both my predecessor, Roy Griffith, and myself called it that routinely. We had fought to get it stopped. Roy had done a brilliant job a couple times getting it stopped. And then when I took over this position, I had helped to get it stopped. And finally, again, they lowered the threshold to get it across the line. That's their new thing, find the lowest means possible to get across the line. They slammed it through. We had a couple of people who changed their votes on it. And hopefully in those districts, they will not be voted into new offices they're running for. One of the issues with AB 28 is it's built completely like every other law that they've tried to pass on a complete bold-faced lie. And the lie was, Gabriel said, well, there's already 11% excise tax on firearms. And so that's because people love animals, and that's because hunters realize they're a bunch of screw-ups. And so, yeah. Okay, number one, that's called Pittman-Robertson dollars. It came in the 1930s, and Pittman-Robertson dollars are responsible for more conservation work being done and the saving of more species. And it was done by hunters to stop market poachers and other people. It was complete. It was never a self-inflicted thing. It was hunters were saying, hey, we're willing to put money away through a tax to save for future generations this wildlife. And then they formed all sorts of organizations that we know today, like Ducks Unlimited, National Wild Turkey. I'm not going to get everybody, but I mean, like literally dozens of groups to go and restore the wetlands, restore vital hunting areas, things like that, and have been attributed even by Governor Brown for doing the vast majority of the work in the state and nationwide. He takes that and says, okay, now I want to do an additional 11% tax. So that means, let's just be fair, you'd go out and buy $100 worth of ammo. Well, before, the 11% tax was embedded in that price. But now that 11% tax is being added into it in only one state, this one, which means 22%. But then you go like in parts of Orange County, other places, there could be a 9 to 11% local tax and state taxes put on it. So now you're talking, you could be walking out with a $130 purchase, and $30 of it is taxes that nobody else pays. And it goes into a program that has not been well defined. So it's going to become a slush fund for the government, who is already, as we speak, 68 plus billion with a B dollars in debt. And their solution is, let's tax the people that doesn't have a clue. They have no way to stop us.
Who are already being taxed more than everybody else. And you know, what really gets me about this one is, I mean, you're right. You know, you could go and if you're watching this and you're thinking that it might apply to you in a way where you're ending up spending $130 on a $100 purchase of ammunition, I'd probably be in that same boat. But you have to realize also there are people out there who want to protect themselves that don't already have a firearm. And that additional tax could be the difference.
I just had a lady, Kevin, that called me up about this, and she lives in an area that is not horrible, but it's not great. Lost her husband a year ago, tragically, fairly young. He was in his 30s, died. She's trying to take care of 2 kids. There's been some violence in her neighborhood, her area. But right now, she is barely making ends meet. So for her to go get a CCW in this current matrix that we have in 24, this is her look. $600 for a firearm plus tax. She's going to have to buy about 400 rounds of ammunition, which freaks some people out on the left because that's for her to go practice, train with, and then to qualify with to get that CCW. Another $500 to $1,000 to go through the CCW process, plus you're looking at $2,500. So she has the right, an enumerated constitutional right to protect herself. What they have basically done is said anybody who comes from, and this is what's mind-boggling to me, from a depressed area economically, socially, culturally, yeah, you're on your own. You can't protect yourself. We're going to make you pay so much taxes that you can't protect yourself. So you have to be dependent on the government that has let the criminals out, aided and abetted criminal behavior, and removed law enforcement. And there are areas in this state where law enforcement is more than 60 minutes out. We're not talking 5, we're not talking 10, we're talking 60, which means all they're going to do is take a report on what happened. They're not going to be able to defend you. And it's not their fault. It's the government's fault.
Well, yeah, and this is just another dampener on that culture because no matter what way you shake it, you're making it harder for people to have access to something that you and I would argue is a constitutional right, and you shouldn't have barriers like this to get access to. So look for that. That is an additional 11% on a excise tax on firearms parts, as well as ammunition. So, Rick, obviously these are some valleys in the roller coaster of peaks and valleys that is already 2024. If you can, really quick, I mean, what's the legislative session looking like here in 2024? Are you hearing any rumors? We have already gone over in a past video some 2-year bills that we have to look forward to. What's the session looking like so far?
It's a nightmare, to be blunt. We're in a situation because of SB2 and a constitutional crisis here that needs to go to the Supreme Court as fast as possible because we have people that have lost a basic constitutional right. And as a result, the far liberal, crazy left sees this as a green light to continue the assault on our community and on that right. And so we have insurance bills that are coming up to try to force insurance on every firearm. There's bills to try to enforce mass registration. There's bills that are being considered to also knock out shotguns. So it will literally be one firearm, no matter what type it is, per month. Just thing after thing. And all these are designed. And some of you out there may be like, well, I already have my firearms, or you may not have purchased a firearm and said, why is that a big deal? Let me give you one example. We have kids that's their sport, is shotgun shooting or rifle shooting. That's how they pay for college. And you're having people say, well, I don't like that sport, so I don't care. And you're like, well, how's this? What are you talking about? Well, Kevin, if you're a coach of a reasonable team of 10 to 12 people, you're going to have between 12 and 20 shotguns because not every shotgun fits everybody. Shotguns break during the season, etc. They all have to be in your name as the coach because teams can't own it, schools can't own it, organizations can't own it. And so the coach has to own it, has to be in the coach's name. Well, you don't want to sign on for 4, 5, 6 years of being a coach, nor does your family. You're going to coach for maybe 2 years, maybe 3. Well, now the way the matrix is going to be set up, you have to, the moment it's like I have to 1 gun a month to you, and then you're going to have to do it down the road, which means you're going to commit yourself to at least 4 years. And if you can't, you're not going to take the position, which means there's no shotguns for the kids, no program. And that hurts us in the Olympics. It hurts us in a lot of places nationally. But basically, that is part of killing off the next generation. And that is exactly what the governor said he was going to do. And anybody that thinks that's a line of crap, wake up, because it's not.
Well, certainly we are going to be following along. Certainly we are going to be as active as possible in advocating for our Second Amendment rights throughout this legislative session. You know, I got to tell you, it seems like at one point the process was to slowly erode away the Second Amendment rights, but Senate Bill 2 is not an erosion. That's a chunk. SB 1384, that's not erosion. That is a chunk. An 11% increase in taxes, that is a huge chunk. So we are starting to see these pieces of legislation evolve in the state. I want to thank you, Rick, for coming on. Do you have any final thoughts for the 2024 legislative session, some litigation that's happening? What are your final thoughts here?
My final thoughts is, folks, we have a March primary and you need to wake up because, I served in the military during the Cold War, grew up in the Cold War before the wall fell down in Germany, and thought I'll never see that in America. I'll never see where Big Brother has surveillance cameras everywhere. I will never see where Big Brother takes people's rights to freedom of speech, tells them what they can and can't say. That'll never happen in America. It's happening right now in California. And if you don't stand up, then never ask the question how it happened in other countries, because people didn't take a stand. You have the power of the vote. You need to go do it. And for those of you like, well, I can't trust the voting machines. Well, you know what? The only way we're going to prove that is to actually go vote, so we have enough people to say, how is that even possible with the number of people that showed up?
Well, fair enough. As always, Rick, for the wisdom and knowledge, I do appreciate you coming on and spending the time. I know that you're a busy guy. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And if you like this content, you're certainly going to see more of it in 2024. We're going to stay up to date with the legislation. We're going to stay up to date with the litigation, and we're going to stay up to date with the culture and the programs that CRPA has to offer, especially looking forward to those 2024 elections. As always, guys, I want to please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.